rebooted G1 Megatron, and it'll likely be the main choice for many for a long time. Or at least until 86 makes their version.
Number 21!
Yep. Your eyes do not deceive you. Unicron is here at this part of the list. Not only am I counting Haslab, but I also genuinely believe this is one of the most hype releases the trilogy has to offer. Save your complaints, I've heard it all. For many, this is the most despised release Hasbro has.
Quick question. Which do you think is better? Haslab's Unicron or 01 Studios' Cell? People were understandably wary of Hasbro's Unicron from the jump, given that it was the first Transformers Haslab they had done, and while many people were excited for it, just as many were critical of the engineering and sculpt choices. And that's before getting to the fact that it costed over $500 US. Then Zeta Toys came in with their side brand 01 Studio, announced their Unicron, which, while smaller, seemed to have a much cleaner transformation and was at a cheaper price point, and the fanbase was off to the races debating which of these two was worth picking up. But within all of this debating, I was reminded of another Unicron figure. Now this one may not be as good as the other two, its age is definitely showing, but within this figure I see the potential for a truly great toy. Maybe not the largest or the most show accurate, but one that could easily be the most fun. That would be the first transformable Unicron toy, Armada Supreme Class Unicron. Well, technically this is the 2010 Japan exclusive movie recolor, but you get the point. It's crazy to think that this mold is over 20 years old now, and today I wanted to take a look at it for two reasons. One, to see how he holds up to today's standards and whether or not he's worth getting nowadays. And two, to show how this guy could be the blueprint for a great Unicron toy. So with all that being said, let's get into it. Unicron is a tricky character to get right in alt mode, and I don't think it should be surprising why. He turns into a planet, a literal sphere. How do you do that while still keeping his humanoid robot mode proportions? Well, in the case of the unreleased G1 version, they didn't, instead making the planet his entire body, with the head and legs popping out from it, and the arms being the planetary ring. But for the most part, shell forming is typically seen as the answer. There was the unreleased version for Beast Wars Neo, which went with some extremely large parts of the plant mode just hanging off the back, which would then be expanded on with the Haslab version, compacting the shell far better at the cost of very thick shins and a prominent backpack. 01 Studio Cell, meanwhile, was a more traditional transformation. It definitely still has a lot of panels, but the actual robot mode is far more involved in the process than the Haslab. Not to mention the panels for planet mode compact even more than there too. So with all of that in mind, how did Armada Unicron go about getting a perfectly spherical planet mode? Well, that's the neat part. It didn't! Remember, Armada is a kids line, not a line geared more towards teens and adults like Generations and Masterpiece. They're not going to be adding high-level transformations or gigantic multi-layered panels. Instead, they took a much simpler route, using only two shell halves and focusing primarily on one side, leaving the back completely flat. On paper, that doesn't sound great, but I gotta say, in practice, it actually works really well. In spite of the compromise, this still does a pretty good job at being a giant mechanical planet. The colors do a good job matching the look of the movie, and most surfaces are covered in a black wash that really brings out all of the details. Then, of course, there's the mouth, which not only looks great, but also has a spring-loaded eating feature. Doesn't work perfectly on my copy, but still. And that isn't the only play feature this guy has. Remember, this is an Armada toy. As such, Unicron has a bunch of different ports for minicons. And fortunately, he does come with his own minicon in Dead End. Bakugan-looking motherfucker. You can plug this guy into the center of the shells or nearly any space on the planetary ring. But like the Maw, you get some more play features by plugging him in here. There are some slots here for these missiles, and the minicon port is a hidden switch. You get where this is going. Push down and BAM! Spring-loaded action. Simple, fun, and as we'll see later, this doesn't affect the robot mode at all. Lovely stuff. Now, while I am willing to overlook the back section, I can't really ignore the problems on the front. More specifically, this gap between the mouth and the feet, that's not great. Really wish the shells extended a bit further, but then that would make them even longer, so I can kinda see why they didn't do that. Also, and this may be just me, but the rings don't really want to stay in place. Given that other videos I've seen haven't seemed to have this problem, I'm willing to let this slide, but I figured I'd still mention it. Overall though, this planet mode is okay. It's fairly compromised in order to keep things simple, but even so, there's enough here in terms of aesthetic and playability that I find it to be pretty enjoyable. Now normally I like to do a size comparison for both alt modes and robot modes, but given how difficult it is to keep Unicron's planet mode upright, I'll just give you this shot with the usual suspects and leave it at that. Naturally he won't really scale with anything, but he's still pretty big. But now let's move on and tackle the transformation. Compared to his recent contemporaries, Armada Unicron has an extremely simple transformation, though with one caveat that may make things a bit cumbersome for some. That being the planet shells and rings. Not in regards to untabbing them, that's easy enough, just remember to adjust the ring like so for the robot mode configuration. No, the problem is that they're fairly loose and tend to flop around. Just do your best to keep them out of the way and you should be good. From here, we'll bring the legs all the way down and flip the planet sides around 180. Then we can bring the feet out a bit, push from here to get the front of the foot out and rotate it around, then bring the heel all the way back. Now we can separate the arms and extend them like so, which will let us put the crotch piece into place. Then take the arms and tab them into the sides of the torso. Of course, we have the classic hand system, but also remember to push the shoulder armor up into position. Finally, we can bring the head down, adjust the horns, and we're done. I've gotta say, the compromises made to the planet mode really pay off here, because this robot mode is great. Whether you're looking at this one, the original, or the Energon version, this guy looks fantastic from all angles. Like in the planet mode, the black wash is putting in a lot of work helping the sculpted details pop out. Maybe a bit too much in the case of the shoulders, but these are using a softer rubber plastic, so that might be why it's sticking out more than usual. Really nice job on the head sculpt. Not to spend too much time criticizing a figure I don't own, but I really don't like Haslab Unicron's head sculpt. Mechanical details are great, but they've piled so much onto the face that you sort of lose the forest for the trees if you catch my drift. This guy keeps it simple and looks all the better for it. The eyes do look a bit dull though, but that's because they light up. The right hand also has a light up effect on it as well, and thankfully both these come with batteries and they're pre-installed. Nice stuff. And let's not forget the good old mini-cons. Like in planet mode, you can use the spring-loaded missiles on the shins, and you've got a bunch of different spots to either plug the mini-cons into, or store them like the inside of the shins or his stomach. But as you can see, there is a mini-con port on his back, because as with the shins, the chest has a spring-loaded missile in it as well. It's a really nice feature, doubly so with how it doesn't affect the articulation at all, something that could be said for all of these play features really. But I'm not gonna load it up because this thing shoots fast and hard, and I'd rather it not go flying off at high speed and hitting something. That leaves us with the articulation, and I wouldn't blame you for thinking this guy couldn't do much. Unicron Trilogy toys aren't exactly known for having stellar articulation, but Unicron is actually surprisingly poseable. Sure, his head is just a swivel, but the arms have what you'd hope for nowadays, and get a pretty good amount of range. And he has a fully functioning waist swivel. Also, shoutouts to the hands having individually articulated fingers. It's funny how this guy released around the same time as MP1, but actually has better finger articulation than he does. Unfortunately though, while the top half articulates fairly well, the lower half is hindered by the bizarre lack of thigh swivels. I really can't figure out why they didn't bother, there's plenty of space for it. Outside of that, the only other issue with the robot mode is the rings. These things don't want to stay in place at all. They are super loose and flop around while you're messing with the figure. It's not the worst thing in the world, but if these joints were either tighter or able to tab them in somewhere to keep them in place, it would have been greatly appreciated. Still, the fact that these are the only issues I have really does show how well designed Unicron is, which brings me back to what I said at the beginning. This guy is a blueprint for a really great Unicron toy. Armada Unicron doesn't have the massive size and presence of the Haslab version, nor does he have the insane accuracy and posability of Cell, but this guy does just enough of both while having all of these play features that with just a little bit of refinement, this could easily be an incredibly fun Unicron to release at retail, filling a niche the other two don't. Sadly, I don't think Hasbro or Takara are going to be very interested in doing this anytime soon, but there is one company I can think of who might be. Fans Hobby. I should really go into more detail as to what exactly third-party Transformers companies are all about, but to keep things on topic, Fans Hobby has spent the past few years making masterpiece-styled versions of the Unicron Trilogy cast. Not everything they've made has been a hit, but they have made some really good stuff, and I would love to see them try and make an updated version of this guy. That probably won't be happening anytime soon, I'm aware, but still, a man can hope. Unicron is quite the large fellow, about 36.5 centimeters to the top of his head. Easily the tallest figure I've covered so far. Supreme Class sits in this middle ground of large scales, being bigger than Commander Class, but only around half the size of the traditional Titan Class figures. Given that trying to get Unicron to scale with retail Transformers would result in him being the size of a house though, I can't really say I'm that bothered by it. So beyond the hypotheticals and wish fulfillment, is Armada Unicron worth picking up nowadays? Well, it mainly depends on whether you want something purely as a display piece or something that you can, for the most part, comfortably mess around with. If you're the former, then the Haslab and Cell are for you. Or I guess just Cell, given the Haslab isn't really available unless you're willing to go down the eBay rabbit hole. But if you're the latter, then Armada is the way to go. This guy may be pretty old at this point, but I still think there's a lot of fun to be had here. But with that all being said, we're at the end of the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later!